Great. Oh, you got the glasses on. Brilliant. That's great.
Have we got any attendees yet? We haven't got any attendees. Oh, you haven't let anyone in yet?
No. Give me a minute. I love the panic button on it. What would happen if we pressed the panic button?
We pressed it once, remember?
Did we? What happened?
I can't remember.
Halfway through, maybe we should try that. Hi everyone. I can see everyone starting to get in.
Hello everyone.
Hello, morning, evening, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Do pop your names in the chat box, and also let us know what's most on your mind about kind of starting as a locum, because we're going to make sure this masterclass is really, really useful and kind of helpful to everybody. I'm also going to type something if I can spell properly. Do the webinar. Can you also, it's probably important to ask, can you see and hear me and Craig okay? Because we assume you can hear and see us, but maybe you can't. I don't know. Can you your name in the chat? Can you see and hear us okay? So we're going to give everyone a couple of minutes to hello. Oh, hi. Yes, so you can hear and see us. Hello, Charlotte. Just to check, is it being recorded? So yes, Charlotte, I'm hoping to record it. So the last webinar Craig and I did together, it just didn't record properly. So I am hoping to record it, and I will definitely send a replay out to you guys once it's done.
Yeah, we had a tech fail last time, unfortunately.
Yeah. Hi, Rebecca. Yep, you can see. And so where is everybody tuning in from? Because that's the other thing Craig and I were talking about. We were saying, oh, it'd be great to, if you guys are in our patches. So I'm in Southwest London. Craig's Northwest London, Craig?
North Central.
North Central London. So yeah, just let us know which area you're going to be working in, because if we can link you up with people we know, or kind of get you connected in some way, happy to do it. So hello Rebecca, hello Sal Sue, I hope I pronounced that right, and hello Charlotte. Oh, Charlotte's in Torquay. What the weather must be
really nice.
Yeah. Hayley, where are you tuning in from? And Rebecca, where are you guys kind of tuning in from? Torquay sounds very nice and exotic. So S is in the East Midlands. Okay.
Worcestershire.
Okay. Essex, Southend. Okay. Hayley, I did your VTS talk. I can't remember, or they've all merged into one now, but I did it a few months back, I think. Charlotte was on the beach this afternoon. I'm very jealous, Charlotte. I'd love to come there if I
Hi, Aram. Welcome.
Oh yes, hi Aram in Derby. Okay.
Gosh, going to the beach. It's amazing.
Yeah, that sounds.
I sweated in a room today.
Yeah,
I think you can do anywhere actually, but I couldn't. The beach wasn't an option.
Yeah. Okay. Shaman saying they can hear us. Any tips on finding work? North London, Barnet area? Yes, definitely.
Yeah, we'll talk about some tips shortly.
Southwest, Wiltshire, Manchester, Berkshire. Okay, great.
Welcome, Alexander.
Yes. Oh, hey, that was, yes, it was just for you and on mat leave. Oh, brilliant. Yes. Okay, great. We'll give everyone like a couple more minutes and then we'll get started.
Yeah, do fill in the poll if you haven't done so already as well.
Oh, has that been published, Craig?
Yeah, we've got lots of answers on it.
Wow, okay, well done.
Can you see it?
I can now, yeah. Now that I've clicked on polls, I can see the poll. Okay, so yeah, it is a good mix then. Kind of got some post-CCT, like first fives, some ST3s, and a few ST1s and 2s. Brilliant. So it's a good mix.
If you're 5+ years post-CCT, can you let us know sort of if you're willing to say how kind of in what stage? Because we're also really interested in, we may have some people who are perhaps towards the last 10, so the last 5 of their career, and sort of if that's any of you, we'd love to know about it.
Yeah. Jack is from Peterborough /Bourne. Gloucestershire, Wiltshire. Okay, so we've got quite a good spread, Craig. Great. Rosmi, hi. Rosmi's from Manchester. I mean, I think the content we're going to cover today will pretty much be relevant for any of you working anywhere, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And there's always kind of more local support that you can find either through your first five or through your CCGs and LMCs. But generally, we're hopeful that kind of everything that we share will kind of be relevant for everybody. Okay, great. Shall we start, Craig? Because
yeah, let's start.
Everybody kind of log on. So hello, everyone. I'm Serena, and this is Craig, and we're going to give you a bit of an intro into our backgrounds for those of you that haven't joined our webinars before. But essentially, this is a Locum Masterclass, and it's going out. It'll be recorded and sent out. I think we've had well over 100 and something people sign up for it. And the idea behind it came because I've been getting lots of emails from many of you worried about kind of setting up and getting started as a locum, and many of you have questions on different aspects of it. And I think between Craig and I, we can probably cover most topics. So this is kind of the second masterclass we've run together. And what we're going to talk about is finding work. Got here, Serena, my celebrity mentor. Hardly. I normally just sit here eating my light yogurt pots and fish fingers. Not very celebrity at all, but thank you.
Spoiling the glamour illusion.
So. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I should have kept it more. I can't do illusions, Craig. Right. So we're going to talk about how you're going to find work, how we found work, and what the most common ways are to find work, and the different types of locum work, which I'm going to let Craig actually talk about because he explains it really well. Negotiating. So once you've found your job and you've agreed it with a practice, what do you do then? Like, how do you kind of take the first steps between negotiating that and then kind of getting started? And what do you need to ask about? What do you need to make sure is in place before you take on that job? I'm also going to talk a little bit about invoice, pension and tax, just so you've got a clear understanding on what you need to do about it. A bit about pay rates, so that's going to come into your negotiation as well. And obviously we're going to do a live Q&A, so you can just ask us anything and we'll happily help as well. And do share it with your fellow ST3s and any other people that you know. So just a very quick thing about me. I finished my GP training just over 5 years ago now, and I've only ever locumed actually. I mean, this is essentially my CV, as I like to call it. So I run MLM, or My Locum Manager, which supports many GPs like me who do locum work and portfolio work. And it, just takes care of all that stuff. And I've got lots of other portfolio roles that I do. But because I have only ever locumed, and my locum income has been my mainstay income on top of everything else, I can kind of share that experience with you guys and how that helped me kind of with flexibility, because I've got 2 small children who you might even hear shrieking upstairs now because they're still not asleep when they should have been. But it's given me flexibility. It's also given me continuity in the way that I work. Because I work regularly for a few local practices, I don't have a huge commute. I've got a very stable income in that way. And it's been a foundation that I've used to build on to, kind of all my other portfolio roles. Right, Craig, over to you.
This is me. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me back. My name is Craig Seymour. I'm a GP in Islington in North London. I started as a so I CCT'd 6 years ago now, just almost on 6 years. I then went straight into a fellowship where I was actually a part-time salary GP as part of that. Then I became a partner for 4 years. And now I'm a sessional locum GP for almost the last year. So I suppose I've spanned most different types of roles. And I guess that's why I'm here today, to kind of sort of support in this way. We like most of you, spent a lot of time most recently in scrubs looking confused with a mask on. And that's where I spend some of my week. I'm also clinical director for quite a large primary care network in Islington, hence all the process mapping and being on teams. I also sit on the board of a GP federation locally. I'm currently doing an MBA with the NHS Leadership Academy, and that's Stella the Welshie, who you may or may not hear. I hope you don't. Last time she caused a slight tech
Stella has a habit. No, I mean, you know, I love Stella, Craig, I really do. But Stella has a habit. Whenever Craig's doing a webinar with us, she just starts barking. And
she gets too excited by by contracts and locuming, and who wouldn't?
Yeah, exactly. So if anyone's having issues with their signal, what I'd say is I think it's called refresh. There's like a refresh button there. Just click on that and that should hopefully restart it. And just check you're on Chrome, because Google Chrome seems to work very well with Webinar Jam, and close any other windows you might have open, because that might be the reason why it's interfering. But I will be sending out a recording. Okay, so this slide is our standard question slide. Do ask any questions you've got. We want to make it genuinely useful for you guys so you start confidently.
Yeah, pop them in the chat, and while we're doing different bits, we'll have a look at the questions as they come through as well.
Yeah, so many of you will recognize this slide. I mean, take a screenshot of it if you like, but you will get the recording after. But if you're going to locum, these are the documents you're going to need to have handy. I have them saved as a PDF so that I can just email out. And at the moment, your first mainstay of finding work in this kind of COVID environment will be approaching practices directly. And they are getting really busy. I mean, I've had 6 requests today for work over the next 2 weeks, which I can't do because I've got the kids at home and I've got all this other stuff going on. But that's just one practice. And, you know, I was just like, oh God, you know, I'm sorry, I can't do it. But, you know, you can send it out to other MLM GPs if you want. But these are the documents you need to get together in order to start working. And now I'm going to hand over to Craig very quickly, because we've covered this in our previous webinar, but he's just going to give you a couple of tips on putting your CV together from a locum perspective.
Yeah, top tips. 1, remember that your CV is about getting you in the door. So make sure that, remember, your CV is prime real estate. So anything that's on your CV should be either essential or really relevant. And just think about what's relevant if you are doing your CV as a locum, and so your experience and your skills are probably really relevant here, as well as, you know, can you use EMIS? Can you use System 1? Have you got experience of document? Those kind of things are really useful to know now, I suppose, Accurix and all that. But actually also that you may need to have a different CV depending on what it is that you're applying for. So if you're thinking about a salaried role or a portfolio role or something else, or an academic role, you may need to have different bits that form part of your CV. So just bear in mind what it is that you want it to say about you, and what does it need to say about you.
So I think,
and keep it, if you can, to 2 pages.
I think that's a really good point about putting on AccuRx and remote consulting. I'd also definitely recommend to you guys, there's loads of free webinars at the moment about COVID and remote consulting. So Redware have got a really good one and it's totally free. The RCGP have got another kind of COVID consulting one. Just watch those. They're only about 50 minutes long, and then put them in your CV that you've done it. Because at the moment, practice managers are going to be looking at oh yes, and Craig saying about videos on YouTube. So EGP Learning, which is run by Dr. Hussein Gandalf, he's done lots of videos on it. If you just watch them, then put in your CV that you are video or digital consultation ready because you've undertaken those courses. It's going to give practice managers a lot more confidence. And remember, what you're after is, what you don't want to do is have hundreds of practices where you go, you know, you just don't know whether you're coming or going, but you're just working here, there, and everywhere. What your ultimate aim is to be the go-to locum for a handful of practices. And that can be 4, 5, it could even be 10 if you really want it to. But really, with 4 or 5 practices, you could probably be doing regular sessions where you're getting about 6 to 8K a month. And that's a lot. That is a good amount of money. But you can obviously do more practices if you want. But it's just, if you want to be that go-to locum and not have a place where you're familiar, you don't have to set up every time and get onboarded every time, then the key is actually showing in your CV that you're ready for that kind of work. So you're ready for remote consulting, that you want to work locally, and those kinds of things I think definitely help. Right, so finding work. So a lot of you have tuned in from many different areas, and I think if I'm honest with you, and Craig's going to share his perspective of finding work, because I started to find work 5 years ago when I finished VTS training. And there's, like, in my experience as a locum, when I first started, everyone's like, oh, just sign up with these agencies, sign up with this app, you know, you'll get loads of work. And what I found was I'd be going for 2 hours in a day, some random practice in London somewhere, where they'd be like, oh, you're the locum. All right, you're in that room. And I'd be seeing these patients, and most of these practices ran on having a different locum every day because no one really wanted to come back again twice. And it was really unfulfilling. It was quite high risk work. And now with COVID, I definitely wouldn't want to do that. And also it meant like my day was about driving all around for a 2 hour session, or, you know, maximum 3 hour session, or doing 2 hours in one place, then driving to the other end of London to do 2 hours anywhere else. And I just wasn't very happy doing that. Then I spoke to a few friends of mine that had qualified ahead of me because I'd had maternity gap. I finished a bit later than them, and I finished out of sync. And they were like, why aren't you just contacting practices where you want to work directly? And I was just thinking, can I do that? Isn't that a bit weird? Like, what I don't know, how would I do that? And it was just as simple as kind of finding a group of local practices, emailing them or calling up the practice manager and saying, oh, I've just qualified from this VTS. I was working under Dr. Blah Blah as their registrar, and now I'm, I'm doing some regular locum work in the area. So can I send you my documents? And they were like, yeah, send them over. And some of them said, you know, pop in and see us. And I went, and there were practices I went in that I thought, yeah, this is not going to work for me, because it was really disorganized, very chaotic, and others that were really warm and just very, you know, I remember I took my son in when he was really little at a few of them because I just couldn't get childcare, and the receptionist just took him. The practice manager took me off for tea and cake, and I had a great hour with free babysitting, and I've worked there actually ever since. So the outcome of that initial searching, emailing and calling, which was about a day's worth of my time, meant that I secured 4 practices. I've actually worked in many more than that, but there were 4 practices that I still locum at today. And I go there, I've got my room set up, I know everybody, I go to their Christmas parties, I'm very much part of the team. So that's why I got here about building a practice database and also avoiding competition. So what's really funny is, in COVID, lots of GPs unfortunately had their income hit because they had sessions cancelled, particularly those that work only through agencies. But I actually was very calm throughout this, because my practice manager was like, oh, look, we're actually scaling back at the moment, but as soon as it gets busy, we're going to message you. So I had that confidence, and that's actually what's happening now. They're all messaging me and saying, we've got 6 sessions in the next 2 weeks, can you cover them? And I'm like, well, I'm actually, you know, I'd love to, but unfortunately I can't at this time. But it's meant I'm not competing with other GPs for jobs, and my income is protected from that point. Craig, you've actually started this much more recently then, because I did this 5 years ago, and the practices I secured then myself, I still work at now. You've done this much more recently. So do you want to share your experience about that?
Yeah, so I came at it from a slightly different way. So when I became a clinical director, I also became a locum largely at the same time. And I really want to learn about the practices in my area. So I sent out an email along with my CV, basically saying, I'm around, I'm locally trained, I know how the systems work. If you'd like to employ me, please employ me. Please think of me if you need sessions. And actually what happened, so I've got 13 practices in my patch. I've worked at about 6 of them, maybe 6 or 7, and I probably do regular sessions at about 2 or 3 of them. And that's probably the kind of ratio you get. And then I get ad hoc sessions at others and no sessions at some.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. Mine was very much the same. So when you're contacting practices, I think both of us agree, say a bit about you, say where you've trained and that you want to work locally and that you know the area and you know the systems, and name drop who you've been a registrar for or who you've worked for in the past, because all in primary care, it's such a small community, everybody knows each other. Craig, should we do some of the questions and then move on to the next slide?
There are a couple of questions, and I've been sort of doing them as we go. Some of them around CVs. So I think people can see it in the chat. I don't know. We need to go over it again, but it's fine.
Okay. Right. So this is a screenshot of NHS Choices, which is a really good website that I used to find my local practices, and it's a free website. It's run by the NHS. You put in your postcode. So if you just Google find NHS GP, it comes up with this web. I think it's the second one. I think Babylon actually advertised first, and then this one comes up. But when you go on it, you click to find GP, you put in your postcode or select location near me. And this is kind of a list of all the practices in the local area. It tells you how far they are. It gives you a phone number. You can click on the link and go to their homepage and find out who the practice manager is. I mean, that is what, for there, that would take you maybe 5 minutes to call them and just, you know, get the email address of the practice manager. I'd say get the name and email address of the practice manager rather than sending it to the generic practice address, because it will just sit in that inbox until somebody from reception actions it. So just go to the person who's going to be employing you as a locum, which will be the practice manager actually. Also think about your VTS practices. So ask your administrators. So whenever I'm asked to come and do talks on VTS groups, it's your administrators and PDs that email me. And those administrators know all the training practices in the area and have all the trainers on their list as well. So all you've got to say is, oh, can I just have the email list for all the training practice managers or the trainers or whatever? And because you might not want to stay at your training practice for whatever reason, they might not have, you know, any sessions for you, or you might just not want to stay there for whatever reason. So other training practices are a good point of contact as well. When you find a locum session locally, which you will very quickly, it's also worth starting to contact the neighbouring practices. So if I contacted this practice, these practices would be the neighbouring practices, and I'd say, oh, I locum at Fairhill. You know, can I send you my CV if you need any regular locum cover, because I quite like working locally? And they'll be like, yeah, there you go, and you'll get work that way as well. Other areas you might want to get additional work is out of hours, 111, urgent care, A&E streaming, or extended access hubs. And you can just Google your local services, and on every single website for that, they'll have their contact. So in Kingston, where I am based, it's CellDoc is the provider for out of hours, and they've got their own website and they've got a recruitment email there. And when you go direct there, you're removing the competition aspect, because everyone else will get those jobs when they're advertised out through an agency or something, but you'll get first pick if you just go there directly. They'll check your documents and they'll put you on the system and do your training. Does that make sense? Craig, is there anything else you want to add?
Sorry, I was engrossed in the chat. There's some quite good questions in there. But I would absolutely
suggest, read them out for people that are listening, and maybe like the key ones. Yeah, but go on.
Yeah. So there were some questions around indemnity. Do we cover indemnity today? We don't, do we?
We can do. We can cover whatever they want. It's live Q&A. So yeah, we can definitely cover it.
So the question around indemnity sort of quotes around £4,000. I mean, essentially with indemnity is the bad old days, which thankfully you guys won't know or won't have experienced, is that actually indemnity has been immensely expensive as a locum, and it got to the point where it was almost £1,000 per session per year, kind of equivalent. It was sort of getting towards 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 a year. Now we've got Crown indemnity. The only bit you need to pay for is you need to pay for I can't remember what the term is. The bit that if you go to a tribunal or you go to coroner's court or whatever it is, it's
so basically all non-NHS related claims against you are not covered by state-backed indemnity. So what that means in plain English is state-backed indemnity will give you a bit of an insurance that if something happens, you'll get some representation. But what we all do as GPs is we call each of the 3 providers and we get this additional insurance policy. So we say, can you insure me? So what I did was I called up the 3 providers, which is the MPS, the MDDUS, and the MDU. I'll put that in the chat box. And I just said, hi, these are the roles I do. I locum, and I do locuming for X number of sessions, and I do all these other roles. And they said, okay, well, your quote comes up to, I think it's £400 mine comes up to for the year, which is actually really cost effective. And what that means is, if I get a claim against something work I've done which is deemed non-NHS, so that could be work I've done as a locum, but involved signing a form for a marathon runner who then had a cardiac arrest during his marathon, and then it comes down to me, why did I sign the form? Or any professional allegations, Serena, you looked at me funny, or whatever, something like that. Or any GMC referrals, that's what that representation will cover. So you should all get that regardless, because it's just that extra safety policy, and you want to make sure you've got any representation there you would ever need if you ever needed it.
Yeah, and it's also the support bits, that all the Crown indemnity bit covers you for any sort of outcomes. If you get sued or you found negligent, then there's the money that's the payout.
Yeah.
There's also, you don't get the support around it, so it's also advice. It's about if you need to go to court for a coroner's case, which actually is NHS work, but actually it's really stressful. If it ever happens, you're going to need support as to what to do around writing reports. You need to pay for that. And there's also a private bit. And actually, although you may think you don't do private work, if you fill in any kind of insurance form or any kind of forms or do a taxi medical, that's private work. So you'll need to have some cover for it. But mine is sort of, I managed to get that. I got the maximum bit, which is the 7 to 9 sessions to make sure it was covered. And it comes to less than £800 a year, so it shouldn't be £4,000.
Yours seems to be really high. I'd be really surprised at that quote, to be honest with you. I would try calling the 3 providers I put up again and just say, I'm going to be doing roughly this number of sessions as a locum. Can you tell me how much it's going to be for the year? And the MDDUS do a discount for first 5 because they've got this partnership with the RCGP. So that 4,000 does not seem normal. It could be because you're adding in out of hours, that's pushing it up a bit, but that still seems really high. Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, out of hours should still be under Crown Indemnity.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, that seems really high, Charlotte. I think try the 3 again and tell them we sent you.
Give them a call, Charlotte.
So you spoke to Craig and Serena and we were like, that is ridiculous. You need to know.
That's outrageous. Get yourself a bargain. It's something's gone wrong there somewhere, but that's okay. Get some. That's fine.
Call them again.
And around sort of applying for work. One of your colleagues on the previous webinar took the advice and she wrote to local practices near to where she lives, and she was offered locum work as a result of that. So it does work, and it is about approaching practices that you'd like to work at and saying, "Can I be part of your locum bank?"
Yeah, definitely.
So be polite and professional about it.
Yeah, and from the last webinar, you're right, actually, Craig, because I had loads of emails after that saying, "Oh, I've heard back," and some of them hadn't heard back from their initial email, then they followed it up, and now they're booked in all the way through September. So I think genuinely, like, my husband's a partner, and I can tell you, practices are getting super busy now. People have put COVID at the back of their minds, and they just can't go back to the GP with their paper cuts and all the other, non-essential things. So it's getting really busy now. So I think it's a really good time. Sheila's asking a really good question. Can you locum anywhere in the UK if you're on a local performers list? Yes, you can. You can locum anywhere you want. You just need to be attached to one performers list. But yeah, you can work anywhere else you want. Okay, cool. So
although the bit I wasn't sure about is if you're trying to work in Wales but you're registered in England. I don't know how that works.
If you're working in Wales but you're registered in England
or in Scotland,
you probably have to register with their local health board.
Yeah, I check if that's relevant to you. I check it.
Yeah. And Charlotte's saying it was with the MDDUS. Yeah, that doesn't sound right, Charlotte, because that's who I'm with. I'm with the MDDUS. I mean, granted, I don't do out of hours, but that's really high. Mine's about 400 quid for the year.
Yeah.
So just double check that. Yeah, double check that. Okay, so how we help with finding work. So MLM is not an agency, and I'm very anti-agency, actually. I just think there's just, like, when you can do it yourself, you don't really need that extra hassle. But one thing we have done and launched successfully and are growing quite rapidly with is this internal system. So we launched this initially in Southwest London and now some parts of Northwest London, and we've got like 7,000 practices on MLM that we are going to link up with this now very rapidly over the next couple of months. But essentially, so here, this is a screenshot of Matt's account, and here you can see, you can get some requests through. So the blue is all booked upcoming sessions, yellow is sessions that have been invoiced for, green is sessions that have been done, paid for and sorted. And these white boxes will appear in your calendar from local practices. And when you click on it, it brings up a list of where the practice is, and they'll all be local to your area or within your CCG. Just because it's safer to work that way. And, it's also, there's plenty of jobs within one area. You don't need to learn all new prescribing policies, etc. But essentially, those will pop up, and then you can request it. You can email the practice directly from it and just say, can I do it like this? Or I want different times or whatever like that. So that will be showing up on your MLM account soon. One thing I should say, because I had about 4 emails about this, in order to access that and be booked, you need to have, in your account area, you need to have your documents uploaded, because once you do that and message us, when a practice links with you, they can't see your calendar, they can't see what you're paid by other people, but they can see your documents if you consent to them being shared. So you must upload a photo, upload your documents. And in GP practices, any session you've been doing at a practice that onboards onto My Locum Manager, you'll automatically be connected and they can send you the sessions rather than emailing you. And any other local practices can send you sessions through it. It all happens automatically, but you need your documents on there. Okay, a bit about contracts. So Craig, I'm going to hand this one to you and then I'm going to say my 2 pence worth.
Yeah, so contracts in this, those of you in the previous session will have heard me talk about contracts in the point of view from a salary GP. I think contracting as a locum is just about both sides understanding what the expectations are. And there's nothing, it doesn't mean that anything on here that you'd agree to do is bad, or you shouldn't do it, or that locums shouldn't do it, because actually a job can be anything. It's just about, I think, both sides really understanding what the deal is, what the expectations are. And particularly, we're talking about things like number of hours, if admin is included, if home visits are included, and how many, and if they're in addition, then how much rate that might come to. Are these on-call sessions or not on-call sessions? And of course the rate of pay. So I think that, and it's just really good to have these done in this clear way. And Serena's got this template that helps you to share that and talk about it.
So essentially, this template you can get on the resources section. I sent the link, and essentially what you do is you just fill it in with your details. So once your practices have come back to you and said, yes, we'd like you to work, and you've asked them the questions which we're going to cover next, you would then say, oh, is it okay if I send you my T's and C's? Have a look at it and let me know if you've got any feedback. That's how I would do it, and that's how I've always done it. And in there, you've put in what your hourly rate is, confirming the kind of times you usually work, and what happens if there's a significant event, what happens if there's extras added, all those kinds of things. How many maximum number of home visits? So my maximum home visits on a duty doctor day is 2. So I do 2 home visits. Anything extra, then I either charge extra for, or I just, because when I'm not doing those home visits, I'll be doing all the admin and everything else, and I just need time in the day to manage all that. So that's something I've negotiated with the practice. So you would just negotiate that and just have it in writing, and it includes your cancellation charges as well, because that's important both ways. Having said that, there have been occasions where some of my regular practices have, in the last minute, so sometimes a week before, a few days before, said, look, Serena, really sorry, the salary GP's cancelled their annual leave now, so we don't need you for next week. And I've never said, listen, love, look at the T's and C's and send me my money. I've actually said, oh, okay, no worries. And what they've always done, like guaranteed 100%, is the week after I've then been booked in for like even double like sessions. So they've made it up to me. So I think there is a bit of give and take in it. I know some GPs will say, no way. If they've cancelled me, I'm charging. And obviously it's entirely up to you, because you're a self-employed person. It's up to you to discuss. So it's up to you, but I would say a little bit of flexibility is really good. So the question is, what does hourly in 15 minutes mean on T's and C's? What does hourly in 15 minutes? What does that? I don't know. I'm trying to see what you're referring to. So on here, agreed rates of pays, you might agree with the practice that you're going to be paid hourly. So your minimum consultation length should be 10 minutes. You shouldn't be seeing patients for like in 5-minute slots. So that's kind of a standard kind of one. And maximum number of appointments per session. So mostly in an hour, you'll see maybe 4 patients or 5 patients, and you might have a 10-minute catch up as well.
Oh, I can see what you're referring to. It's right at the bottom. What she's saying is that if there's any additional time that is added on, it comes in 15-minute chunks as opposed to 1-minute chunks.
Yes, yeah. So any extra patients that are added on, then I usually just charge them at in a 15-minute extra increment. So if, for example, I was charging, I don't know, £100 an hour, and then I saw 1 extra patient, I just charged 15 quid for it. Thanks, Charlotte. Yeah, we've got there. I've worked it out now. I've worked out what that meant. So I hope that clarifies it. Right. So Craig and I were talking about this just before we started the webinar, because he was talking about a situation he had today. I don't know, Craig, do you want to share that? Because I think it's quite important in terms of the context of what we're going to talk about. You know, where you said you went in for a session today and there was...
Yeah. So there's a practice that I used to work at quite a bit pre-COVID, and it used to be 15 patients in a session, in a 3-hour session, and then I asked them, because of course now they're all telephone appointments. Is actually, well, what happens if you need to bring people in? Is there any extra time allowed, or is the template changed? And actually, they didn't have a response. And luckily today, I didn't need to bring anyone in. But I suppose it is useful to ask questions like that and say, well, actually, what might happen if this was to happen? And it doesn't mean that you then don't do it, or that actually they wouldn't be happy to then pay the extra time. But actually, it's just about, I think, sometimes preempting what some of the questions might be, or some of the scenarios might be.
Okay. So what I'd say is, when you've emailed out your practices and spoken to the practice manager, they'll get back to you and say, yes, can you cover these dates? Thank you for your documents. And you need to send your documents then, because they need to do their checks and have you ready to start. And then you want to really ask, when they say, yes, can you do these dates? And if you can do those dates, say yes. What you want to know is, what will the session involve? So, and you can just ask that, yes, happy to do it. Can you just tell me what type of session you need cover for? And then they'll say, oh, it's just pre-booked appointments. So you're thinking, what does that mean? So pre-booked appointments mean they'll book you. For example, I do pre-booked appointments on most of my sessions. That means from 9 till 12 and then 1 till 4. I just have patients that have called up on the day to be booked in to see a doctor. And I'd go in and I'd see those patients, and then that's it, I'm done for the day. Others might say to you, oh, it's duty doctor for the day, or you're just doing the morning on call. And that means you'll be doing phone triage. You might have some prescriptions to sign. You might have a home visit if it comes through, and you'll be seeing patients. So you're doing a little bit of everything to help with the day-to-day running of the surgery. I'd say if you're just qualifying, just check you're not the only doctor in the building if you've just finished qualifying, because I think a Friday on your own, running a practice by yourself as the only doctor there, is a little bit, probably a little bit of a big ask. So just make sure, like if they're saying on-call duty doctor, that there's going to be other doctors and other staff there. You also probably want to clarify about home visits and say, oh, how many do you usually have home visits, is how I would approach it. And if they're like, yeah, we have hundreds and we expect the locum to do them all, then you can say, oh, okay, because I usually, like if I'm there for the morning, I usually do just 2 home visits as part of that session. And any more, I just, I'm happy to do up to 3 or whatever it is you might want. And that I charge that at half my hourly rate is the usual going thing for it. Or you might say, oh, I'm sorry, I can only do this many because I've got this other practice to get to. But that's something you negotiate with the practice. It's important to have boundaries. So it's important that both parties know, not just the practice, but you also, that on both sides, that there's some boundaries and there's some expectations on both sides. And I'm going to talk a bit about practice expectations in a minute. If there's administration generated from your session, from patients you've seen, you wouldn't charge extra for that. So any referrals from patients that you've seen, or tests or whatever, you would do that at the end of your surgery. So if you've seen patients 9 till 12, I typically will finish by 12, and then I'll do about 15 minutes of my paperwork and handover stuff, and then I'm done for the day. You can't really charge the practice for self-generated admin because it's part of the job. But if the practice is struggling with paperwork, and that has happened before, and I'm sure going forwards it's going to happen again, they might say to you, look, would you mind helping out with prescriptions or document? Or you might say, listen, I'm happy to do the pre-book session. If you need an hour of my time for extra admin, I'm happy to do that as well. And then they would pay you for that administration time, but you would do that, whatever is required within that hour or 2 or whatever you've agreed. So I hope that makes sense. And you can, as Craig said, you can charge a longer session. So I tend to work longer days, which is, again, very different from agency work. I tend to do 9 till 12 and 1 till 4 at most of my practices. Even when they ask me, oh, Serena, are you free for a couple of hours? I usually, as a standard, I'm like, well, yeah, I can do 9 till 12. And they're like, yeah, cool, okay. And if they don't have patients that need to be seen or dealt with, then I can often say to them, oh, well, if you need any extra admin, I'm happy to do that. And we just negotiate from there, like how that session's going to look. But your key questions really are, once you've been asked to do the work, oh, what will the session involve? Is it going to be pre-booked patients, or do you need me for an on-call? are there going to be any home visits? And a lot of practices, like in some areas, they have a team that goes and does all the home visits. You don't need to get involved in that. And some of them hardly ever have home visits, whereas others might have a few. So that can be an option. So Rekha's asking, thank you for the really useful webinar. If you negotiate an hourly rate plus pension contribution, does this mean it's all included in the hourly rate, or it's remunerated extra? So Rekha, I'm going to cover that. So normally your hourly rate, so I get about 85 an hour plus pension contribution on top. And in the invoices bit, I'm going to talk a bit about how that works out on your invoice when you send it. And then, is hourly rate better than a daily rate? Craig?
It depends. It really depends. It depends on your relationship with the practice. It depends on what you're doing. It all depends on how you like to be paid. It really depends. I know that's a really kind of wishy-washy answer, but it's also kind of up to you and what your relationship with the practice is and what works for you. In the same way, actually, although you say, minimum 10-minute appointments, actually, if you're doing quick 5-minute, it depends on how it works and what you're comfortable with doing and such. But I don't sell yourself short, and equally, don't sell yourself up the river either. But it all depends. It depends on what it is you feel comfortable with and what works for you and what works with you in the practice.
So what I'd say to that is, would you rather have a 2-hour session, which is paid at like £90 an hour plus pension, or a day rate of where you're there for 5 or 6 hours and being paid like, £500, £600, but you're there for a lot longer? So often the day rate, when you break it down, it will average at about maybe £75-80 an hour plus pension on top, but you're there for the whole day. So you're not having to look for any other sessions. So it is a bit of a trade-off. So you're doing more time at a slightly less hourly rate, but then it works out a lot better because you're doing longer sessions. And I've said this before in my previous webinar, there is one practice that I work at, it's owned by a single-handed GP, where I get paid 75 an hour plus pension. And some people who've known that are like, oh my God, that's ridiculous, that's so low. But I'm there for I can be there for 2 whole days in the week. The admin staff are amazing. I don't have any paperwork or any admin. They make me cups of tea. We have a good chat. It's a really friendly vibe. The patients are lovely. It's just a really nice place to work. So I'm just like, well, why not? That's, so that's the trade-off really. I'd much rather do that, have a lovely day, have a lot of fun and enjoy myself and be there for the whole day than be somewhere really stressful and be there for just 2.5 hours and just think, oh my God, I'm so glad that's over. So that's, I think, Craig, that's what he means by it depends. It just depends on what it is. Okay, so what you might want to ask, we've covered this really. Are you the only doctor there? You probably want to know how they do the referrals, what the handover procedure is at the end of the session. Also tell them that, do you have regular sessions? I'm really interested in doing regular sessions. I've talked about contacting neighbouring practices, and ask with the pay rate. Just say, is that inclusive of pension? Does that include my pension rate? And I'm going to show you how that works out shortly. Craig, is there anything else that we've missed that we need to talk about here?
Only, I think, if you're unfamiliar with the area, ask what computer system they use. And also, I suppose, ask if it's worth you popping in earlier to make sure you get set up on the computer systems, make sure your logins work, make sure your smart card is synced, because actually it's that kind of stuff that really derails you when you're there for a session, and it's a bit stressful if you're anything like me.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely go in early and just get set up and, just kind of make sure you're ready to go at least 15-20 minutes before your session. Someone mentioned the MLM guide. Yes, there is a guide. I've got to find it. When Craig's talking, I'm going to go and get it. But that covers everything that's in the slides in the step-by-step way. So it's definitely worth reading before you get started, because it will cover everything in a broken down way and what you need for your doctor's bag, and just it's a really nice way to get started. Right, so common questions that we get: how often should I invoice once you've done the sessions? What can I charge for? So this comes back to, you can charge for your times, you can charge for the sessions that you've agreed, you can charge for any additional home visits and extra admin that you do, and you can charge for any extras that you see. But I would say just try and be flexible. And, if you saw one extra and it's a place you really like, to be fair, I don't really make a fuss, I just do it. But I get that in return, I get a lot of work that way, and I just, get a very nice environment. So don't be too prescriptive with it. but just just be a bit flexible, I'd say. I'm also going to cover how do I pension, things like tips on finding an accountant. And loads of you emailed me this week saying, is MLM available as an app? So the answer is yes. You don't have to go to the App Store. You can just save it to your home screen on your phone, and then it will save it as an app and you can use it as an app that way. So I just thought I'd put that in there just so I save you guys from emailing me. Okay, so locum pay. So Craig, do you have anything to say about locum pay rates and anything like hidden charges or any other things that people need to think about?
Definitely clarify if it includes.
While you do that, I'm going to look for the guide. Keep talking.
If it's plus pension or including pension, absolutely be really clear about that. And we also get asked about, hourly pay versus sessional rate. And I think Serena's covered it actually, in the sense that actually I did a session recently which was like quite a high rate. It was £90 an hour for 2 hours, and actually I'd rather have been there for 3 hours and and 250 quid than be there for 2 hours and earn 180 quid, because actually you can't do anything else in that time anyway. So just and also you can't just think about ask around, see what the going rate is. And also I generally ask practices, well, what do you pay? And actually I wouldn't, practices aren't there to screw you out of anything. So sometimes it's just worth asking people what they pay, what they normally offer.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good tip. So when you've heard back from these practices, they'll probably say to you, what's your rate? You can just say, oh, what's your usual rate that you pay your locums, and negotiate from there. Okay, so this is a screenshot of MLM and how often you would invoice. So typically, most of us will invoice once a month, and there's a reason for that. Your pension forms have to be in within a 10-week window. So what I tend to do is I go on MLM, I click and I just select my invoices for the month. And then here, I just wanted to show you this. So someone said about pay and pension contribution. So here, I've been paid like 300 quid for that session. And of that, £270 is pensionable. And that means the practice is paying me, on top of that £300, £38.83 in total, because that's what they're paying into my pension pot, as well as the rate that I'm being charged. So I hope that makes sense. The guide, so I was looking for it, it's here, but I think my son's just disappeared with it, but I've got a picture of it at the end. So that covers the steps in pensioning. And I don't want to spend too much time here doing it, but I've done a little quick, like literally 50-second video to show you how you do it. But on here, what you do is you've got this toggle where when you click the toggle, if you're pensioning, it will attach the pension form for you automatically, and it will calculate what that pension rate is for you. So your 3 steps to pensioning, first of all, 4 steps. First step is read the guide. So I'm going to put the link, you can just download it off the resources section. I've put it in the chat, and that covers step by step what you do. But just your 3 steps are, when you send an invoice, you just click that toggle. That will attach your pension form A to that invoice, and it will be emailed directly to the practice. Your second step is when the practice pay you, you go into invoices and you mark it as paid. And the reason why you need to do that, and it's not an automatic step, is because you need to ensure that money's hit your bank account, and also your pension contributions are calculated from the date you've been paid. So what I tend to do is, at the end of the month, I click a button, all my invoices and pension forms go off. Week later, I'm like, all right, I've been paid. So I go on, click mark as paid, and I generate my pension form by pressing on the month. And then all I have to do, the tricky bit isn't MLM, that bit's easy. The tricky bit is NHS England and pensions. And I'm going to show you this video, and I'll talk you through really quickly about how to do it, if I can play it. Okay, here we go. Yeah, that's it there. Okay. So I don't know if you can hear me while I do it. I hope you can. Okay, so play. Okay, so here you've got, I don't know if you can hear me. Craig, can you hear me? Okay, so here, that's a request from a practice, and you can request it if you want, have a look at it, and then just decide what you're going to do. Oh, my internet's going really funny with this. Okay, so here I've got all my sessions for the week. I'm going to invoice now. So I click on invoices, and it's got a list of all the different types of jobs that I do. So here I'm going to click an invoice for Wandsworth. So I go and click all the orange buttons, and it's created my invoice really nicely. And now it's going to add, when I click this toggle for pension form A, it's going to add my pension contribution to the rate. There, it's done it for me now. So I don't have to pick up a calculator. I just press that button and those forms are going to go off to the practice. And that's my pension form A sorted. Then every month I do a pension form B. Oh, there I'm just showing you that where they're stored and where they're signed for you. So pension form B, you click it and you think, okay, I need to pension for July. So I click July and it's going to create the form for me already populated with the amount I have to pay in. And that's it. But the end bit is where you go onto Capita's website to do it. I should actually show you that. I don't know if it's
I mean, it's the kind of thing where once you've done it once, you get it, and the first time you do it, you'll need to read the guide. And Capita don't make it easy for you to do it, but MLN does.
Yeah, we do, definitely. So what I'd say is, what I didn't show you there is on the pension form B tab, there's a hyperlink that you press, which takes you through to Capita's page. So you can upload all your forms with them. So that was a How to Pension video. Okay, so we've covered pension. Oh, one other thing that MLM will do for you, which is really important, is it records your mileage, okay, which is really important because that's a tax deductible expense. So record it for you, record it in your expenses, and when you download everything for your accountant, they'll have a whole spreadsheet there that's kind of ready to go with all your expenses, and you'll save a huge amount on your taxes with that. So it's really important. I've already talked about all the additional support. That is a screenshot of the guide that you should definitely download and have a read through. It's a very easy read, but it just means that you're ready to start. And as Craig said, once you read the guide and you just go through the steps, everything you need to pension is on the system. On pension form B, there's a link, you press, you go through to Capita, you upload your forms, and then you need to transfer the money to NHS England's bank account. But it's as easy as it can be. So resources for you guys. Today we talked about CV templates, setting terms and conditions, and the guide, and that's all available for you guys on the resources section. And that's the guide. I also wanted to signpost you to this. So it's a free guide I co-wrote with Redwell, and it's available on the Redwell website because it covers sepsis guidance, dealing with emergencies, because part of the thing with locum work is being clinically very confident, and it can be hard to get that confidence initially, especially when you've just CCT'd. So you can download that Locum Essentials guide for free as well. And it's, I mean, I normally come out and, give it out when I come and do VTS groups, but you can just save it on your phone and just have a read of it when you're assessing patients. Cool. Okay. So we've covered loads actually in terms of getting set up and started. And I think those tips should, Craig, get them through pretty much every single scenario in terms of negotiating, getting work, how to invoice for the first time, pensioning. So if you need accountants, I only work with medical accountants actually, and we've got partners that we can link you in with where you can find recommended accountants. And what they won't do is tell you to set up as a limited company. They will talk to you about what your financial goals are, because actually being a limited company, although people think, oh, I only pay 20% tax, actually you forgo the pension. You then also increase your risks of falling in IR35 and getting taxed at source and all sorts of things. So I'd definitely get proper advice before thinking about the limited company route.
Yeah, that was one of the questions in the chat.
Yeah, so if you're a limited company, you're not eligible for your NHS pension. And why that's important is because your pension is tax deductible. So all that money that you're putting into your pension pot, you get tax relief on. So when we've compared pound for pound, limited company versus sole trader, actually, in most situations, you're not better off as a limited company. And we've got a lot of our webinars on YouTube. If you look for My Locum Manager Career Kickstarter, there's a limited company sole trader one. That's an old one from last year, but we are doing another webinar for our members in the beginning of August actually to cover that. So you're welcome to join onto that. So Iram's asking, for out of hours, does the out of hours company do the solo form, and then do we have any forms to do? So generally you will send the out of hours form to the solo form to the out of hours company, and they authorize it for you. Some of them run an internal payroll, so they'll sort it out for you and then send you the form for you to send on. But whichever way you're working, you should log all of your income streams on one site. So when you download it, you've got everything there for your accountant. So I think, Iram, the answer is it depends on the provider. Some providers will say to you, okay, this is the number of shifts you've done. We've sorted out your pay. Here's your solo form. Others will say, can you send us an invoice with a solo form and we'll authorize it for you. So it just depends on the provider. Okay, so Craig, what are you saying? People won't pay extra if you don't pay pension?
One of the questions was, if I'm not claiming pension, then can I charge extra because it's costing them less? And I said, well, no one's going to pay you extra if you're not going to if you're not taking your pension's your own choice.
That's true. So if you're not taking a pension, you could, as a limited company, just account for that. So say, I don't know, you charge 88 an hour instead of 85 because you've accounted for that, but you can't pension that income then unless you're putting it into a private pension.
No. And you need to also ask, if the going rate is 85 and you're charging more, what are you adding extra for that amount? Why would they hire you?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a really good point. I think, yeah, you do have to be careful with that. I wouldn't say, look, I'm adding on few extra pounds because I don't pension because I'm a limited company, because they're not going to be that impressed with that. So S is asking, is it available countryside, and can I see what shifts are available in my area on my calendar? So yeah, so it's actually like a national platform. So the way the shifts work is, I should probably clarify this. So the way the shifts work is you can invite a practice to sign up to our practice portal, and that normally happens automatically now. When you send an invoice, they're automatically invited to do that. And we have 7,000 practices we're trying to onboard at the moment that already use MLM GPs and already use our system. So once we've got them all onto the practice portal, they can then send you all their shifts directly. What they're doing at the moment is they're sending all their own MLM GPs shifts, and if they can't then fill them, they're sending them to other MLM GPs. So in order for you to see those shifts, you would invite your practices onto the practice portal, which happens automatically when you send your invoices, and other practices can send you shifts. But generally, what I'd say your first point of call is to find your own work, because I'm saying this genuinely as someone who runs a software where you can do a bit of both, but I have always sourced my own work, and that's my work that I'm not competing with anybody through. Any other shifts that are sent out anywhere are stuff that everybody else will be competing for. And what you want to do as a locum GP is have your own group of your own database of practices where you work regularly, and then anything else on top is great. But for now, especially with COVID, you want to source that work directly, so you're not going to be competing with other people. Does that make sense? Cool. Rebecca's asking, should every locum have an accountant? I think so. So having an accountant, Craig's like, no, maybe not. I think, Craig, we can play devil's advocate here, but I was just going to say, getting an accountant is a tax deductible expense. So, you get an accountant and that's tax deductible. Second of all, if you're doing additional, like if you're doing a lot of locum work and you're pensioning, etc., the way your tax is done, like for example, the way my tax is done, the MLM will record all my mileage and I'll add all my tax deductible expenses on there. And then my accountant can maximize that by looking at, okay, what I've done, what bits we can do for, come in as CPD, what bits come under this, that, and the other. And also, I don't have the bandwidth to sit there trying to fight with HMRC and fill in those forms that I just have, just no clue about. So, and I just want to share one thing that happened to me, which was just in my ST3 year, I wrote to the HMRC to claim back my AKT and CSA costs. And they asked me to fill in this other form, which I did. So I had to fill in a tax return. And I had put in the number, and then they said, what's the total? So I put in the total, and I got paid the money back. And then a few years later, it turned out they had charged me twice because I put the total in the wrong box. So it looked like it was 2 lots of whatever it was for my CSA and AKT. So that was, then I had to get my accountant to sort that out, because I was like, I don't understand what I did wrong and why are they charging me this, kept asking me for this extra money towards this. And he was like, yeah, because you put in that box. I'm like, both boxes look the same and they don't make any sense. And he was like, well, no, they do make sense. And I was like, that's why you need an accountant.
And there's two other things you need an accountant for. And I didn't mean to shake my head, actually. I think everyone should have an accountant.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like, no, wait, do it yourself.
Because one of the things is payments account. So when you pay tax as a locum, you're self-employed, you need to pay tax in advance. There's a whole finance webinar, I think, is that next week's one, but actually you need to think about how much you should be paying in advance. You need someone to support you to do that, because if you underpay, HMRC get upset. If you overpay, you're out of pocket, or we get it back eventually, but it's really annoying.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, so you do, so when you first will pay tax in a 1.5 years time, and when you pay it in a 1.5 years time, you're paying the tax you owed for last year plus 6 months in advance of what you're supposed to earn for the next year. So you do pay it like a decent chunk. So that's why having, like with MLM, you record like all your receipts and expenses, and it records your mileage, and it records all your income. So you would literally press a button and send that to your accountant, and they can see, and then they can say to you, okay, so for next year, you're going to pay X amount because that's this year plus the next 6 months, and it means you can financially claim for that.
The other thing that's really useful for accountants is that at some point you have to fill in one of those pension forms. We have to fill in, there's really complex forms. No one knows how to fill those in. No one. So you're going to need help doing that. The other thing, it also relates to S's question around what can you claim, is that an accountant supports with what you can claim and to what degree and what you should be including. So I would absolutely agree that you need an accountant.
Yeah, so when you sign up to MLM, all our accountants offer you discounted rates and free advice, and they run a lot of our webinars. Actually, pretty much all of them do VTS talks or like the London AIT conference, and they're used to kind of GP trainees and supporting GPs. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't go without one. Hayley saying she tried to claim for the last 5 years and they told me I owe money, not sorted out yet. So yeah, Hayley, if you need an accountant, just message me and I can help you with that, and they can maybe help you get that sorted out. Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. If there's any other questions, pop them in the chat box. And Craig, thank you so much. Again, it's been great doing a double act with you. So I think my advice for you guys would be, your next steps are start connecting now with practices, like use NHS Choices, definitely sign up to MLM, give it a try and see how much it can help. When you sign up, you'll get an email with a chance to book a one-to-one session. So that's usually with me. And there I can go through any other like troubleshooting, or if you've booked somewhere with a practice and you need support, happy to help you with that and link you up with accountants. And I'd say relationships as a locum is really important. Having relationships with your practices has seen me through many different times of my life, from when I had new children to when I wanted to try other portfolio roles, when COVID happened and I had the security of those relationships. When stuff's happened with patients, I was talking to Craig about significant events, and there was a significant event in one of the practices where I work with a young patient who ended up having cancer, and we all had a significant event meeting. And when you get a message about a patient, so I was one of, I think, 8 doctors that saw this patient, so we all just met as a collective to discuss the case and learn from it. But it was really stressful. And even though I had actually nothing to do with the original case at all, because I was one of the doctors that had seen the patient for something completely different, I went to the significant event meeting. But I got so much support by being there with that group. And it's those relationships that will definitely kind of help you guys. Someone's saying, is that inclusive one-to-one? What do you mean? What does that mean?
Inclusive in the signing up to it.
Oh yeah, so when you sign up for your free trial, you get a link to book a one-to-one, so you can just book it through that. Great. So good luck, everybody. I think don't forget the guide. Definitely get the guide. I can probably put a link. I don't know if I can put the link. I can't remember. Oh no, I put the link on it. It's the resources section. That's the quickest way to do it. Craig, any parting words of wisdom?
Have fun. Look after yourselves.
Definitely.
And remember, it is about relationships, so try not to be too rigid. Just have a good time and learn and find nice places to work and be brilliant doctors, because you already are.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. Okay, good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Oh, you got another question, Greg.
Oh.
Due to go straight on mat leave post CCT, when should I sign up to MLM before starting work? Also, when do I email? Okay, so you're due to go on mat leave. So do you know what? If you're due to go on mat leave, just do your mat leave, and then when you're ready to come back to work, then start contacting practices a few months before.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it now. Enjoy your mat leave.
Yeah.
Take time out, enjoy your baby and your cuddles, and then like we'll be here and practices will be here. So yeah, you can definitely. But if you know any ST3s, share the love. Just tell them that sign up to MLM. That's it. That's all you need to tell them. Sign up to one of the webinars, sign up to MLM, and you'll be sorted. All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye all.
Bye. Good night.